Now we're going to start the mimer from Kdoshim Tihyu, Tavshin Mem Aleph. Kdoshim Tihyu ki Kadosh only. The pasuk says, "You shall be holy because I am holy." B'chsiv, it says in a different pasuk, "V'yiskadishtem," you shall sanctify yourself. V'yisem Kdoshim, and you will be holy. V'yisem Medrash Rabbah. It's brought down the Medrash Rabbah. Why does it say all these different times the expression of Kedoshim and Kedusha? Mashla Melech, this is a metaphor for a king. That his members of his country, his countrymen, made for the king three crowns. What did the king do? Not la Torah echas for nasim beroisha. He took one of the crowns and put it on his head. Vishnayim, and two of the other two crowns he placed beroish banav on the heads of his children. Kach b'chol yom v'yom, the same thing every single day. Hol yonim machtirim lakadosh baruch hu gimel kedoshes, that the ones above, meaning the malachim, coronate Hashem with three times kaddish, like we say in davening and Shacharis, that the malachim say kaddish, kaddish, kaddish. Oinim b'em avayim b'yira. What do they say? They say kaddish, kaddish, kaddish. These are crowns. Ma kadosh baruch hu oisa. What does Hashem do with these three crowns, with these three kedushes? Noisen beroishoi achas, he places one on his own head. Vishtayim beroishol Yisrael, and he places two on the head of the Eden. Hado d'chsiv, this is what it says in the pasuk. Daber gomer kedoshim tiyu, you shall be kedoshim, meaning and viskadishtem vayisim kedoshim, and you shall sanctify yourselves and be Kedoshim. That's also, again, it's the same Kedusha. So it says twice that the Yidden are Kaddish. That's the two Kaddishes, the two crowns that are placed on the head of the Yidden, versus what it says in the Pasuk, Ki Kaddish Ani, I am Kaddish. The Eibishter says that's the crown that Hashem places on his own head. V'hinei, af shemashmos d'rosh Razal anal. Though the simple understanding or the plain meaning of the Drosh of the Razal is that Hashem only placed two crowns on the heads of the Eden. From the very fact that the command to the Eden, that they were told you should be holy, it also says that because I am holy, that is the crown that Hashem placed on his head. So the fact that the Torah puts them both together, moving, it's understood, also the crown of where it says that I am holy, is also connected to the avoid of the Eden, or else why would it say Kedoshim Tihyu ki Kadosh Ani? There must be a linkage between them. If it was just three separate crowns without any connection, so why does it say Kedoshim Tihyu? You'll have the crown of Kadosh. Why? Ki Kadosh Ani. What's that have to do? Hashem had three crowns. He gave two to the Eden, and he took one for himself. The fact that the Torah links it and says Kedoshim Tihyu ki Kadosh Ani, that you have the crown of Kaddish, because I have the crown of Kaddish, that means that even the crown that Hashem puts on his head, the Kedusha that Hashem puts on his head, is also connected to it. So the Rebbe says, in truth, we could find this hinted as well in the above-mentioned Medrash. We could say, this is also hinted in the Mashal that's in the Medrash, also is called Gimel HaToros, that the members of the king's country, the countrymen of the king, also is called Gimel HaToros. They made all three crowns. So how is that hinted at the Eden? Even though the Medrash says that it's talking about the Elyonim, the ones above, the Malachim are the ones that made the crowns, they are the countrymen of Hashem. But in truth, it's really more than that. In truth, there's the crowns the way it is, that the Yidden, Sharigam Bnei Yisrael, Nikru B'Shem Bnei Medina, also Yidden are called Hashem's countrymen, and therefore it's also Yidden making crowns for Hashem. So therefore, since the Yidden have made the third crown that Hashem wears, Ki Kadosh Ani, so the Yidden are also connected with that third crown. So now the Rebbe is going to connect these 3 crowns with the 3 avodas that the Yidden have. Oizbeis. The Indian, who the idea behind this is the Neisa Mishnah of Masechtas Avos. The Pedek Al Shalom Dim Shavasu. It's brought down the Mishnah of Masechtas Avos. The first chapter that in that year in Tavshim Aleph they were learning in that Shabbos of Achri Mois Kedoshim. That in the first Pedek of Pirkei Avos it says Al Shloisha Dvarim Ha'olam Ha'omed on 3 matters. The world stands Al Torah, Al Avodah, Al Gemilas Chasadim, on Torah, on service, meaning the service in the Beis HaMikdash, and these days the service of davening, and doing acts of kindness, which is also a general, all catch-all term that includes mitzvahs in general, and is symbolic and corresponds to mitzvahs in general. It's explained that these 3 things upon which the world stands, Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim, and Keneged, Gimel, Kiddush, Sanal, these correspond to the 3 levels of Kedusha that we spoke about, that was made the 3 crowns for Hashem. It's explained, look at the Torah on Parshas Emor. At Parshas Emor, we begin to read at the Torah reading on Shabbos Mincha afternoon of Parshas Emor. That over there in that Parsha, it explains Be'inyan Gimel Pamim Kadosh Oim Malachim, concerning the 3 times Kadosh that the Malachim say. Like we mentioned before, we say this every day in davening. The Malachim say 3 times Kadosh. Shem Bedugmas Gimel HaToras Anal, that these correspond to the 3 crowns that we spoke about before. Shekadosh ha'alef wa'alam al-matalamaylam, that the first Kaddish that the Malachim are talking about is the ascent and elevation from below to above. Kaddish ha'bei is the second Kaddish that the Malachim recite to Am Shacham al-Mailamata. It's referring to that which is drawn down from above to below. The Kaddish ha'gimel gam al-Mailamata, and the third Kaddish is also from above to below. So if so, what is this third Kaddish about? Rak, sheyored labata yoser, it descends very low. That's the difference in the second Kaddish and the third Kaddish. Both the second and the third Kaddish descend from above to below, but the second one descends not to the lowest level. The third one descends to the lowest level. And that corresponds to the 3 matters, the 3 that the world stands on that we spoke about before. Kaddish Aleph Shemol, the first Kaddish that's about going up from below to above. That's the idea of the avodah, which is davening, and davening we know is a ladder standing on the ground, and its top and its head reaches the heavens. It's about going up. And va'adli namsiris nefesh, until the complete devotion of self-sacrifice, of completely devoting himself to Hashem, that's a complete ascent. He's standing in his davening like a servant stands before his master. That ascent, that first Kaddish, that's the ascent from below to above, that is the crown that Hashem places on his head. Like it says that there's a malach called Matach, he binds crowns for his master, for the Eibishter, in other words, from the tefillos of the. So we see that tefillah, avodah, has to do with the crown that's upon Hashem's head. The Kaddish HaBeis VaGimel, the second and the third Kaddish, Shemol Mailamata, that comes from above to below. In Yonam Limit Torah V'Kiyam HaMitzvahs, the idea behind them is Torah study and fulfillment of mitzvahs. Shaklalus Migmil Chasadim. In general, the mitzvahs are included in the category of doing acts of kindness, because doing acts of kindness in tzedakah is the ultimate mitzvah of elevating the world, but it's symbolic of all the mitzvahs. So first of all, you can explain the hamshacha of Torah, the going from above to below of Torah, and then how much more there's the above to below of mitzvahs. The Torah is about drawing down below. Like it says, the Torah is not in heaven. V'yisedim is even more so, like it says in the pasuk Hashavas beganim chavedim makshim l'koylech hashmi'ini chaymer, that she is sitting in gardens, and the friends are listening to your voice. Let us hear. What does this mean? This is going to be a proof of how much Torah is down here in this world, how much it's a level of coming down here. The Yisra Medrash, that's brought down the Medrash concerning this pasuk, Shapamal Yeshalamayla, that the heavenly court, V'gam HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kaviyachol, and also Hashem, metaphorically speaking, Boim Lishmoya Koil Eis Torah Shalamata, they come to hear the sound of those studying Torah down here below. That's why it says that those that are sitting in the gardens, meaning those the Yidden that are sitting down here below in the yeshivas and the Bate Midrashes, so your friends, the Malachim, are listening to your voice, and they tell us, let us hear your voice of learning Torah. So it shows about how Torah is down here in this world, and Kaviyachol Hashem and the Malachim need to come to us to hear the Torah. How much more so mitzvahs that descended even lower. We said that the third Kaddish is about an even lower descent. Because mitzvahs descended even lower than Torah, that they are enclosed in physical matters. And they are measured, and they have a boundary, exactly the size and shape and form and details, and not too big, not too small, etc., etc. In addition to the fact that the mitzvahs have a certain number, you can't add to the mitzvahs, you can't decrease from the mitzvahs. There's exactly 613 mitzvahs, no more, no less. But in addition to that limitation and measurement, also in every individual mitzvah, there's a limitation in time and place. Matzah can only be eaten. You can only fulfill the mitzvah of matzah Pesach by night. After the first night of Pesach, you're not fulfilling the mitzvah of matzah. And the matzah has to have a certain shiur, how much you have to eat it, and it has to be eaten in a certain space of time. You can't eat your kazayas matzah over 3 hours and fulfill the mitzvah, etc., etc. There's everything comes down in the limitations of this world. So it's even lower than Torah. Why? Because Torah doesn't have that limitation in this world. As opposed to Torah, that's beyond the definitions and categories of place and time. Chazal say, whoever is involved in the study of the halachas of a carbon oil, it's as if he offered an oil. When you have to offer a carbon oil, there's so many restrictions. The person has to be tahir, has to be a kohen, has to be in the Beis Hamikdash, has to be only during the daytime, not during the night, plus many, many other details. But when a person is studying the Torah of carbon oil, he can be not a kohen, and he can be tamei, and he's not in the Beis Hamikdash, and he's not in even Eretz Yisrael, and it can be by night, and still in all, it's as if you fulfill the mitzvah of carbon oil. So we see that Torah is beyond the limitations of time, not like the mitzvah, which is limited. So therefore, Torah, even though it descends down here below, but it doesn't descend as far as mitzvahs do, it's a further descent. The third Kaddish, which is mitzvahs, is further lower. Beis and Yom the Torah mitzvahs, same Beis HaKadoshis, the two aspects of Torah mitzvahs, that these are the two other Kaddishes, that corresponding to the two other Kaddish, these are the crowns that was placed upon the heads of the Yid. This is also what the Chazal say, second paragraph on the page. Hashem did not stop showing his favor to the Yidden until he called them my daughter. And then it says, Ad shekara achoisi, until he called the Yidden my sister. That's another expression of favor that Hashem showed to the Yidden. Ad shekara imi, until he called her my mother. In other words, these are all different expressions of favor that we find Hashem called the Jewish people. These three expressions indicate three different types of avodas. The beginnes imi hu inyan kava avoida inyat filu mesiras nefesh. The level of my mother, that indicates the service of the Yidden, the line of service, which is the idea of davening and devotion to Hashem, self-sacrifice. Because my mother, that's the level of Bina. We know that Chochmah Bina are likened to father and mother. Alma de Cherusa. It's also called the world of freedom. That's the level of Bina, just like there's the 50 gates of Bina, so the same thing on the 50th year, there is the freedom for all the servants, etc., etc. Inyan Mesiras Nefesh, that shows that he's released from all bounds and he's released from all limitations. That's the idea of self-sacrifice. Shu Inyan Kodesh Aleph, so the level of Imi, that when Hashem called the Yidden Imi, that has to do with the first Kodesh, that has to do with Bina. That has to do with davening. The level of my sister and my daughter that Hashem called the Yidden. That's the level of Torah and the line of doing acts of kindness. It's the second and third Kaddish. He doesn't go into it over here, why it's connected with sister and daughter. So we'll leave that for now. Ois Gimel, last paragraph on this page. What is the meaning of Kaddish? Kaddish means something that's removed, something that's separated. There is everything else, but this is Kaddish. A mezuzah is Kaddish, a sefer Torah is Kaddish. It's removed, meaning it's separated from everything else around it. That's also the idea of davening. Kaddish Aleph, the first level of Kaddish. The idea behind it is the ascent from below to above in a way of being separated and removed until the level and the idea of self-sacrifice. Torah and mitzvahs are not like davening. Torah and Gemilas are about engaging with the world and coming down to this world. But they're still called Kaddish, they're also called Kaddish. And Kaddish means separation. Therefore, we're forced to say, also, and concerning Torah and Gemilas Chasadim, the second and the third Kaddish, there's also the idea of being removed and separated. So the Rebbe is going to explain how and why that is. We can say the explanation, and this is according to what it says in Tanya, that being involved in Torah mitzvahs is also an aspect of giving up his life to Hashem. We had it not too long ago in Perek Mem Aleph in Tanya, that when a person does Torah, learns Torah, and does mitzvahs, he's like raising himself up, elevating himself, and like totally giving up and connecting to Hashem as it is going to be after 120 when he leaves this world. That's an idea of separation and removing. So if so, why do we say that davening is about mesiras nefesh and self-sacrifice? So the Rebbe says, mesiras nefesh gufi yesh gimel dargis, in this type of ascent and devotion and self-sacrifice to Hashem, that itself has three levels. Shem Gimel Kadosh, and now these are the 3 times Kadosh that we say, because there is the self-sacrifice of davening, there's the self-sacrifice of learning, there's the self-sacrifice of mitzvahs, as the Rebbe will explain now. Top of the next page. The idea behind this is though the idea of fulfillment of mitzvahs is also about self-sacrifice, still in all the mitzvahs are bounded and measured and limited, like we said before. It's explained in a different place, and explanation of what the Chazal say. This comes to tell you the praise of Aaron, that he did not change. Though he was in a state of self-sacrifice. That's what he was like, so overcome in his devotion to Hashem, Mikol Mokim Leishino Mishop Mikol Agbolos Shnitzav Aleim. Aaron HaKohen did not change from all the limitations that was placed on him. It says that Vayas Kain Aaron. Aaron did so. What does I have to tell you? Vayas Kain Aaron. Hashem commanded, he did it. But sometimes you could be like so overcome by the excitement of the moment that you forget about the details and you lose track. Am I supposed to light from the right or from the left? Am I supposed to do this or that? But Aaron, with the great devotion Mesiras Nefesh he had, he still kept grounded in the details. So mitzvahs, it's self-sacrifice, and yet at the same time, it's not totally losing himself because it has the limitations and the boundaries. And higher than the self-sacrifice of mitzvahs is the self-sacrifice of Torah. Although Torah is not in the heavens, because when there was a certain Amoira that wanted to prove that the ruling is like he said, and he asked for all different types of miracles and signs, so the Chacham said, that's not a valid way to prove your opinion. Torah lo b'shamayim, but rather al nimshchalumat, it came down here below, like we said before, that Hashem comes down with his court to listen what the Torah is taught down here below. But at the same time, along with the idea that Torah is down here, it says in the pasuk, that Hashem made you hear his voice from the heavens, meaning that it still has to do with a heavenly experience. It's not so much grounded in the world like mitzvahs. To the degree that the Chazal said that the words of Torah are likened to fire. Like it says in the pasuk, behold, my words are like fire. And therefore, therefore, just like fire is not susceptible to tumah, so too the words of Torah are not susceptible to tumah, which means even though someone that is someone that's tameh may not, let's say, enter the Beis Hamikdash, may not eat from karbonis, may not consume trumas and maasros, whatever, holy foods, etc. But when it comes to Torah study, there's no type of limitation. You don't say that a person that's tameh cannot learn Torah, because Torah is just like fire is not susceptible to tumah, so too the words of Torah are not susceptible to tumah, and therefore we see how Torah is still, to a certain degree, out of this world. Torah is still removed from this world. Let us skip the brackets. We'll skip to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Skip down 6 lines to line number 7, the beginning of the line. The words Be'inyan Zeh, that's where we're beginning. Be'inyan Zeh, concerning this idea that the way Torah is not susceptible to impurity. Yesh ma'ila b'Torah gabe mitzvahs. There is an advantage that Torah has over mitzvahs. Shekol ha-mitzvahs emidvarim Torah v'torim dafke. All mitzvahs are in kosher things. One cannot what was only prepared and ready for heavenly work is only things that are kosher. You cannot use a non-kosher animal's hide, for example, to write on in a Sefer Torah, mezuzah, and tefillin, and so on. Most mitzvahs that have to be done with physical objects, or all mitzvahs, need to be done with things that are kosher. So we find this limitation of something that has a certain aspect of purity that before the mitzvah is applied to it. Masha'enkin the Torah, as opposed to words of Torah, like we just now mentioned before, even when a person that's come in contact, let's say, with a dead body or so on. So still in all, they not become tameh. A person may study Torah then. So Torah has a greater form of greater form of distance and kedusha and afrosha of avdallah and mesiras nefesh than mitzvahs. Mitzvahs are susceptible to tumah. That means it's more of this world. Torah is something that's not susceptible to Tumah. That means that it's removed from this world. Tumah cannot touch it. So it's a higher level of Mesiras Nefesh. But it's still not like the Mesiras Nefesh of davening. Still in all, on the other hand, even the Torah is a level of being drawn down from above. But now, like we said before, the Torah is not in heaven. This matter is also hinted in the fact that the words of Torah were likened to fire, because on the one hand we prove that's likened to fire, that it's removed from this world and no tumah can touch it. On the other hand, fire also needs to have a link with this world. Fire needs to have a wick that it can grasp onto it. Without the wick, then it will, if it doesn't have a wick, so it will go up to its root above, in what's called the root element of fire. That's the general source of fire that's under the moon and wouldn't shine whatsoever. So we see how it needs something physical still to maintain it and keep it down here in this world. So we still see this type of connection it has with the world. Since the words of Torah were likened to fire, it's understood they are grasped in a wick down here below. Therefore, even though we said that Torah is an idea of Mesiras Nefesh more so than mitzvah, still in all, it has a connection with this world. The main idea of self-sacrifice in a way of separation and removal, which is the meaning of the word Kedusha. What's the total example of that is in davening. The davening is in a manner of being elevated from below to above. That's the first Kaddish. That's the crown that Hashem placed on his head, as opposed to the Torah mitzvahs are the crowns that Hashem places on his children's heads. Ois Daled. Last two lines of this page. What it says that you shall be holy. Because I am holy, move on, it's understood. Also, the crowns of Kedoshim and Viskadishtim Shenosim Baroshli Yisrael that he placed on the heads of the Eden, which are Torah Ugmilas Chasadim, like we said, Torah and acts of kindness, Torah and mitzvahs. Still in all, Nimshachim Aida Keser the Kaddish Onish Nosim Baroshai Tfilah. These come about through the crown of Hashem, that the crown that Hashem placed on his head, the crown that it says, I am holy, the idea of davening, because it says, Kdoshim Tihyu, you should be holy, Ki Kadosh Ani, meaning that the holiness of Hashem's, the holiness of Hashem, the crown that Hashem placed on his head, the idea of davening is the cause for the crowns of the Eden, of the Torah and Gmil Sasadim. So the Rebbe says, what's the explanation about the connection between these two things? According to what's explained in the Torah on Parshas Bracha and at length in many other places, the Pirish Maimer Chazal, the explanation of the Maimer Chazal, that there was an Amoida that said that he wished to hate Tfilasi Smuchel Mitasi, that my davening should be close to my bed, meaning that the first thing he does after getting up in the morning is, instead of, even though he was not Moira and was very much devoted to Torah learning, first thing after bed was davening. Because he wanted to have that great quality of Torah study that follows davening, because the Torah study that follows davening is much higher than the Torah that precedes the davening. From this is also understood concerning the great quality of the fulfillment of mitzvahs that follows the study of Torah. Chazal say that the ordered way a person has to proceed through his day is mebeis hakneses lebeis hamedrash. One goes from the shul to the yeshiva. In other words, he goes from davening to learning. And afterwards, act in the ways of the world. In other words, go make a living. That after davening, you learn that's greater than Torah study that you would have studied before davening. And Hanig ben Minig Derecheretz, going to work, is not about just working for work's sake, but it's an opportunity to do mitzvahs, starting with the mitzvah of tzedakah and everything else. So this is the reason why it follows davening, is because through the davening, these two things, Torah mitzvahs, is a much higher level. Just like Torah study prior to davening, its level is not so great as the Torah learning after davening. So to the mitzvah of donning talis and tefillin before davening, that's put on and placed on the person as a preparation for davening. And like giving tzedakah before davening, that the tzedakah before davening is a preparation for davening. It's to enable that davening should be in a greater way, like it says, I will show my face before you with tzedek, with tzedakah. So still in all, it's not as great. As opposed to the primary idea of tzedakah, the mitzvah of tzedakah. So to the primary idea of the mitzvahs in physical matters, like a talis with physical wool, and tefillin with physical ink and parchment. It's the idea of acting in the ways of the world that follows both the davening and the learning. So he says in Ois Hey, the second paragraph on the page, that's the whole idea of the descent of the neshama down here below. That's for the sake of the ascent, so to be able to draw down these three levels of kedusha in the world. That through these three kedushas, the world will stand, like we said before, that the world stands upon Torah, Avodah, and Gimel Chasadim. V'yiseirim is even more so, not just it stands, but Olam Kayim, the entire world exists based on these three things, like it says. Or the Seder being goals to such a degree that through our actions and service in this matter of these three kedushas, during the time of Golus, we arrive at the time of Mashiach's time. Then the three levels of these holinesses, davening, learning, and mitzvahs, will be in its perfect state. The idea behind this is, we know when Mashiach comes, it will be the perfection of the idea of Torah. That's the idea of the Torah of Mashiach. That it says it's Gilui Soy Tamel Mr. Tzvanesel. That when Mashiach comes, it will be the revelation of the secret of its reason and its most concealed parts. Like Rashi explains on the pasuk in Shir Hashirim, he will kiss me from the kisses of his mouth. That the kiss is referring to the revelations of the inner secrets of the Torah. So therefore, the Torah will be in its most perfect state, one of the Kadoshes, when Mashiach comes. So too, it will be the perfection in the idea of the fulfillment of mitzvahs, like it's explained in many places. You skip the parentheses. It says that over there, when the third base of Mikdash is rebuilt, we will perform before you like the mitzvahs of your will. And now we don't do the mitzvahs of your will. So he says it will really be according to Hashem's will. The kivun sha'oz tiyah shleimus v'minachai shemenu makrivim v'sakarbanos, because then even living creatures will be in its most perfect state. That those living creatures are from which the karbanos are brought. Like it says, that the wolf will live together with the sheep. They will not do evil, they will not destroy, because the earth will be filled with the knowledge of Hashem, like the waters covers the sea. So the item with which we do the mitzvah of the carbon will be in the most perfect state. Also the person offering the carbon will also be in the most perfect state. Ad Lagila Yechida Pratish Kol Echad V'Ach B'Yisrael, until the individual Yechida that's within every single Yid will become revealed when Mashiach comes. This comes about, how does my individual Yechida becomes revealed when Mashiach comes? Through the revelation of the Yechida of the entire Klal Yisrael, which is Mashiach. Therefore, since the person that's bringing the carbon and the carbon animal from which it's brought will be in the most perfect state, therefore also the actual action of bringing the carbonas, v'chein klolus ma'isa ha-mitzvahs, so too also the general actions of the mitzvahs will be betachlis ha-shleimus, in the ultimate perfection. V'nois v'al shleimus the Torah mitzvahs. In addition to the perfection of Torah mitzvahs, shehem ha-kedushes shegenegdam, hem ha-ksarim shenosim b'reish Yisrael, that these are the holinesses that corresponding to them, are the crowns that were placed on the heads of the Yidden. Tiagam shleimus ha-keser shenosna kodesh baruch hu b'reish, will be also the perfection of the crown that Hashem placed on his own head, that the perfection of Torah mitzvahs will cause kaviyachol the perfection of Hashem's crown. Since it will be fulfilled what's foretold, that Hashem will be a king over the entire earth, and that day his name will be one, he will be one, his name will be one. Not only when Mashiach comes will be the revelation of Hashem's power that's invested in the world, but the revelation of the name of Yudke Vavke Ba'ofen in such a way that your master will not hide himself anymore. Without the concealment of the sun and its sheath, which is how Elokim hides Shem Havaya, so there won't be that concealment anymore the way it is now. Since it says when Mashiach comes, Hashem will remove and take out the sun out of its sheath, meaning that he will remove Shem Havaya from the concealment of Shem Elokim. And how does this come about? This is accomplished through the avoid of the Yidden in the time of exile. Those people that hear themselves being mocked and being shamed, and they do not respond, concerning them, the pasuk says, those that love him will be like the sun coming out in its full strength. Meaning, who is this referring to? Who are the ones that hear their embarrassment, hear themselves being mocked, and they don't respond? Those that are hearing the way they're being embarrassed are the Yidden. That the nations of the world tease the Yidden and annoy the Yidden, and they say, where did your beloved go? In other words, where did Hashem go? Why did Hashem, who is the Chassidus, desert and leave the Yidden, that's his bride, alone in exile? How long is it already necessary to be arrayed in Golus? Through this, that the Yidden do not respond. Concerning them, the pasuk says that those that love him will be like the power of the sun when it comes out in its full force, in its full strength. We merit the revelation of Shemesh Havaya. He takes the sun out of its sheath. So he says in Oizvav, so it will be for us speedily our days mamish, or the same as managol, through our actions of service in the time of exile. Like the Rambam wrote, through one mitzvah, which can be one action, or even one speech, or one thought for good. He tilts the scales for himself and the entire world for the side of merit. He causes both for himself and for them, the entire world, a salvation and a success as well. That the entire world reaches a state of perfection greater than the world's perfection as it was when it was initially created by Hashem, before anything negative happened. They told us Shemaim words in such a way that this is called the birth of the heavens and the earth, and the histories of the heavens and the earth. Even the lost love years away from the elder told us parrots. Since when Mashiach comes, it will be in such a way that these are the histories of parrots that says with two vavs, and the Chazal darshan from it will be in the most awesome way. The year will be fulfilled what was foretold. That will be in that day that Hashem will be one, and His name will be one. That came to the true and complete redemption through Mashiach. Speedily in our days,